In 1873, a farmer from DeKalb, Illinois, invented something that would forever change the Wild West and farming as we know it today. Today I would like to inform you about barbed wire, the history, the purpose, and the popularity. I grew up on a farm, and so I know how barbed wire is effective in holding in cattle and how it helps keep those in on the farm. First, I would like to take a look at the history more in depth. We already know that barbed wire was invented in 1873. However, it was invented, the farmer was Mr. Joseph Gladden, and he got the inspiration for his type of invention by walking around at the DeKalb County Fair, and he saw on exhibit Mr. Henry Rose's, which was one strand with barbed wire barbs, and so he thought maybe a more effective way would be the twisted method in holding those more securely in place and more sturdy in keeping animals in the field. And this is according to Mr. David Emery Shy, who wrote America, A Narrative History, Volume 2. And so in 1873, once he saw this and came up with his invention, he sent an application to the U.S. Patent Office for the design. And his design, he actually had a business partner that he discovered was Isaac Elwood, and they created the Barbed Wire Company. And they had many different patent changes. However, in 1877, they really got their design that we know today. And this is according to Nick Freeth of America, Made in America, from Levi's to Barbie to Google. And so the barbed wire tamed the Wild West and ended those long cattle drives and the cowboy. Today I have barbed wire to pass around for everyone so you can see how this design, Mr. Gladden's design is. Everyone get a turn and looking at that. Now that we know the history, let's take a look at the purpose of barbed wire and what it is. While you're passing that around, you can see it's zinc wire twisted around, and most barbed wire is actually zinc coated. This Gladden's design is zinc coated, and the purpose of this was to keep the animals in a field, in somebody's property, or out of someone else's crops, destroying those crops. They wouldn't yield as much. And so with that being said, it ended the American cowboy who rode around the property boundary lines of those ranches daily, multiple times a day, to make sure that their animals weren't, going on someone else's property, getting mixed together. And actually, once or twice a year, they would get together and sort those cattle and whose is whose and brand them. So this was a lot more effective in keeping yours with you. And this is according to the History Network in 2019. Another purpose was it didn't take up as much space, it didn't shade any vegetation, it was windproof, it didn't block the view, and it was more affordable. Out west, they did not have the lumber resources we have here in Kentucky, and so they had to ship those on the railroads out west, which increased cost. And so this was a lot more affordable for them to use. And this is also according to the History Network. Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders used barbed wire in the Spanish-American War to actually protect their camps. And this is according to Mr. Freeth. So also, let's take a look at the popularity and see why it was so popular or unpopular back in the West. A lot of people wanted to keep the West, the way it was. They liked that. And despite that, the popularity soared with ranchers. The first year it produced 10,000 pounds. And by 1875, they produced 600,000 pounds of barbed wire. And this is according to Mr. Freeth. When Glidden passed away in 1906, he was considered one of the wealthiest men in America. And besides just Mr. Glidden's barbed wire, there are also over 530 patents of this out there. And so another controversy that made it unpopular was this also created land and boundary disputes. Native Americans nicknamed this the Devil's Rope because they couldn't freely access their ancestral lands. So I encourage you to try out barbed wire, see how effective that it is for you. And today we took a look at, learning what barbed wire was, the purpose, the popularity, and the history. With that, I'm leaving one last thought. Cowboys used this, and ranchers, for the long communications they had out west. They were very spaced out, and they used these as telephones. This was the pathway for the telephone and insulators. They used this to communicate. They would use glass neck bottles and hold those up to clarify what they were saying to one another. So here's my Works Cited page. These are some resources that I use. These are great to check out if any of you want to take a look at these and reference these and learn a little bit more about barbed wire. I'm going to give you a moment to look at that. All right, and that concludes my speech about barbed wire, the history, popularity, and the purpose. Thank you for listening.